Hello, this is 1.6 in classwork. In case if you were missed in class going over the notes, I'm going to do B. You're going to do A. So when this is looking like this, you have to make sure to try to get the square root with the x by itself. Now, in this case, because there's two square root x's, I'm just going to move this one over. Why am I moving this one over? Because it's negative. So that's the reason I'm going to be moving that one over. And you want to concentrate on one side first. So I want to get rid of that square root. So the opposite of a square root is squaring something. So whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. However, I'm not going to write the squared above that because a lot of times people get confused. When you square a binomial, that means you're multiplying it by itself. So on the left-hand side, I'm going to have this 2x minus 5. But on the right-hand side, I'm going to have to FOIL that. So when I do this first times first, those two square roots will cancel, leaving me with just the x minus 3. When I do my outside, I'm going to have a 1 plus square root of x minus 3. So I'm taking this term times the other. Now I do my inside. This is 1 times the square root of 3. So I'm going to have a plus square root, or x minus 3, square root of x minus 3. And I'm going to do my last. So that's plus 1. And I'm going to write that as one, or combine like terms. And I can combine this negative 3 with that positive 1. That's where that negative 2 comes from. And then a square root of x minus 3 and a square root of x minus 3 is 2 of them. So now I'm going to try to move everything else over to the other side. So I'm going to subtract the x on the side. I'm going to have 1x. I'm going to subtract that x over there. That's where that 1x comes from. Or add that 2 over. So that becomes a minus 3. And now I still have this 2 square root of x minus 3. Now it's the same type of thing that I'm doing over here. So what I'm going to do is write this over here. So I'm going to square this side. That means I'm going to square this side. Now again, you have to be careful with that because what we're actually doing there is doing x minus 3 times x minus 3. Also, you have to be careful with this. When I distribute this here, that will cancel that root, but I still have to remember to distribute it to this 2. So what I'm going to have there, on the left-hand side, I'm going to do my first outside, inside, last. First, outside, inside, last will be equal to 2 squared is 4. And then the square root of negative, or x minus 3 squared is just x minus 3. See how I leave it in parentheses because that 2 or that 4 is still there. So I'm going to distribute that. I'm going to have my x squared. This becomes a minus 6x plus 9 is equal to 4x minus 12. And now I have to move everything over to the other side. See how these can get kind of long? So I have x squared minus 4x will give me a negative 10x, and plus 12 give me a positive 21. I still need to solve this. So now I can actually factor that because now this is equal to 0. Sorry, that's equal to 0, so now I can factor that. That's going to be x minus 7, x minus 3. So now if I set those both equal to 0, I get x is equal to 7 and positive 3. Remember, you always want to check this. You want to check to see if you have any numbers that don't actually work. They're called extraneous solutions. So if I plug 7 into this equation, I'm really looking at these two spots to see if I get a negative number. If I plug 7 into this, I get 14 minus 5. I get the square root of 9. That's fine. 7 minus 3, the square root of 4. That's fine because I can take a square root of a positive. If I put 3 into this equation, this becomes 2 times 3 is 6, minus 5 is 1, so that works. And 3 minus 3 is 0. I can take the square root of 0, so that still works. So both of those answers work. I want you to pause the video and try to do this top one by yourself. If you want to check my work, pause the video and look at it, but you should have gotten x equals negative 3 and positive 1. Now these next two, when I have a fraction exponent, there's two ways that you can solve these, and I'm going to show you both ways. First thing you have to remember when you look at this is this squared right here. Because of the squared right here, I have a positive negative. So first I'm going to show you how to solve this using the fraction exponent. With the fraction exponent, I'm going to look at that fraction exponent and think power to a power, I would multiply. So I'm thinking I can multiply this by the reciprocal, 3 halves. Whatever I do to one side, though, I have to make sure to do the other side. So 3 halves on that side. Now, when I do this right here, I'm left with just the x minus 4. 2/3 times 3/2 is 1. So this is like the first power. If I do 25 raised to the 3/2 power, I get 125. This is where you have to be careful though. Because the fact that when you square something, you actually have two answers, because it can either be a positive or negative that would make it work. I have a positive answer right there. So now I can split this up to be x minus 4 is equal to 125. X minus 4 is equal to negative 125. So if I add over my 4 for both sides of the equation, x is equal to 129 or negative 121. So those would be my two answers. That is one way that you can do this. The other way you can do this, and it's kind of more of a visual thing to people, is rewriting the fraction exponent, the denominator. That's just a root. So I can rewrite this problem. This is the 5th root of x plus 2 squared, which is equal to 4. 32. So now you set up your two answers because you have two of them. If, let's say, the top number was odd, let's say if it was something else, you do not have two answers. So I subtracted 2 from both sides, and I get x is equal to 30 and negative 34. And the last one, I'm going to show you 3 different ways that you can go about doing this, and this all kind of depends on you. I'm going to show you how to get to the same, around the same spot for all of them, and then I'm going to pause it, and you're going to finish off solving them. So for this one, I'm going to try to get this to be a fraction equal fraction, but I'm only really going to be worried about this side because right now I have a fraction minus 1. So I'm not touching this side of the equation at all. But in order to make this an x minus 3, I have to make sure that I'm subtracting an x minus 3 over x minus 3. Now, one thing I always do with subtraction is I try to make sure to put this in parentheses, go plus a negative. So I know I have to distribute this negative to both of these two terms. So what I have now is the 2x is equal to, this becomes just an x minus 3 on bottom. This becomes on top a 3 minus x plus 3 because I'm distributing that negative here and here. So I have a 2 over x is equal to the opposite x plus 9 plus 6 over x minus 3. Now from here, you can cross multiply to get, and then start solving, which we'll do in a second. The second one, I'm going to combine like these two. So now it's a little bit harder to find a common denominator. My common denominator would be x plus 3. So what I'm going to do is write my x plus 3 on both of them. I'm not going to do anything with that negative 3 yet. So in order to make this denominator on bottom, I have to multiply the top and bottom by x plus 3. At this point, a lot of times people try to cancel that out again. Don't do that. On this side, we already have the x plus 3. We need to multiply by the 2 on that side. So now what we have is we have our common denominator, x plus 3. If I distribute here, I get 4x plus 12 plus the 2x on top is equal to negative 3. So again, on top, what I have is 6x plus 12 over x plus 3 is equal to negative 3. And then we can multiply that over. So this is another way that you could do this. And the last way is to find your common denominator for all 3. So including this one over here and forcing it into being both. Again, I'm going to go plus and minus so that I don't forget this right away from the beginning. But my common denominator is going to be the x plus 2, x plus 6. And x plus 2, x plus 6. Now I'm going to, for this one, I'm going to be writing it for all of them because I'm going to first do the common denominator for all of them. So for this, I look, what do I have? I have the x plus 2. I need to have the x plus 6. So I have 48 and then the x plus 6. Plus a negative 24. I have the x plus 6. So I need the x plus 2. So I have the x plus 2. Here, I don't have anything. So I need this to be x plus 2 and x plus 6. So now what I have going on here is my x plus 2, x plus 6 on the bottom is equal to, on top, this becomes 2 or 48x plus 288 minus 24x minus 48. So I'm going to have to combine some like terms there. And on bottom, I'm going to leave this as x plus 2 and x plus 6. Then top, I'm going to FOIL that. So that would be my first, outside, inside, and my last. So now, at this point, we have kind of the same thing going on. So for this next step on top, I can multiply over the x minus 3. So if I multiply this over here, and I can multiply over this x. And then I can solve that like we have done in the past. So I'm going to pause the video later, and you should try to keep solving that. Now this is very similar to this one, so I'm only going to multiply this over. So I'm still going to have this 6x plus 12 is equal to this becomes a negative 3x, x plus 3. Okay? So now again, I'm just moving over this division to the other side, just like how I moved over this division to the other side. For this one, it's a little bit different. Since the bottom is the exact same on top and bottom, I really only have to focus on the top now. So what I'm going to have, and I'm going to combine these two like terms. So 48x minus 24x will give me a 24x. 288 minus 48 would give me 240. That's on the left-hand side. Again, I don't care about the bottom because the other side has the same bottom. So x squared, this comes plus 8x plus 12. So I want you to pause the video and try to solve the rest, or all three of these, get your answer. So the first one, I solved by moving everything over. Couldn't factor it, so I solved by completing the square. So you got 2 plus or minus square root 10. Now at this point, you can either choose to solve by completing the square or quadratic formula. I'm showing you both. Here, move everything over, and I can actually factor this. So I get negative 4 and negative 1. And the last one, couldn't factor. This time I did quadratic formula just so that you could see that you can do it either way. Again, make sure to separate those two. Your answer is 8 plus or minus 2 square root of 73. And there you have it, the in-class work for 1.6. Beautiful. Isn't that just beautiful? Have a grand, wonderful life.